Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode for the month of August here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia. Many of you know me as the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill. And today, ladies and gentlemen, I have a guest that I am so very excited to have here on the show. She is a really good friend of mine, all the way back to the Inkitt days, and she was one of the original people who interviewed me on their show for Michael back in the day. And I can say so many great things about this incredible person. Her work as an author centers around the supernatural and the otherworldly, and she started writing short stories, poetry, and her first novel at 15 years of age. She had poetry published in literary magazine Ramifications, and her first published novel was Witch Trials Secrets of Loudun, which is the first in the series. And she draws her inspiration from her experiences with the occult, as she is an initiate of a Celtic witchcraft tradition and also helps run an electric grove of pagans in her community. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I am so very proud to have here on the show after a very long time, my good friend and fellow author and Inkitt veteran, Lauren Eason. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Gabriel. That was very sweet of you.
You're welcome, Lauren. You're welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, I mean when I say this that I cannot tell you how many times I have been dying to have my friend Lauren on the show for so very long. Lauren, myself, and a few other Wandering Scribe alumni all met on Inkitt. That's where we found our craft for writing, started sharing our stories with our followers at the time. Lauren is still an active member on Inkitt, writing her stories and publishing them for her followers. And she is an incredible person. And Lauren, I would just like to ask you this. How have you been doing since the last time we talked, just casually? I think it was like, what, like maybe a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, it's been a little bit, but I took a short, well, I call it short, but it was a hiatus for a while just to kind of get back in the groove of things. COVID kind of held everybody up once we got back to rocking and rolling at work and stuff. But I have recently gone back to writing, probably in the past year and a half or so, after I had my son. And so I've actually written a new book since then, called Infectious, which is a dystopian horror with a lot of government political thriller stuff thrown in there. And I'm currently working on the last installment of my Brimstone trilogy. It's the final book, called Ashfall, which is currently going on Inkitt right now for my followers to read as I write it.
Nice. Very nice. Now, Lauren, before we dive deep into some of your incredible works, can you share with us sort of like your origin story, so to speak, as an author? Based on your bio, you've been writing for a very long time. I mean, published your first novel at the age of 15, and you've just been honing your craft ever since. What would you say was like the beginning of your passion for the written word?
It's funny. I guess in the beginning, I actually started writing these short stories. I kind of call them episodes when I was in elementary school, and me and all of my friends were big horror fans. So it was kind of the time of like Scream and the slasher films, and so I was writing stuff that was probably way too mature for fifth grade, but I started writing these little episodes, horror episodes, and distributing them to my friends. In fact, one of them actually got published in the local newspaper, which was crazy. That somebody wanted to publish this short story written by a fifth grader about a teen slasher in in school. Completely different times in the 90s, I can tell you that right now. But It was wild times. That was probably when I started, writing, and then I got more serious about it as I got older. And in high school, I would say that my first book that I wrote in high school, even before the one that I got published, um, I filled up 2 composition books just full of this book. Yeah, I know, just the cow print or whatever composition books, and I let my friends read it, and it was actually started out as a fan fiction kind of story. I don't know if you remember Cassandra Clare writing like City of Bones. It was a YA books, but
think so.
she had this. Yeah, it was like a series. It was like City of Bones, City of Ashes, and City of Glass. Or I might have gotten those mixed up in what order they came in. But I really liked them, so I kind of made like this fan fiction that was just extremely too long, but my friends devoured it because we were all in book club, and we actually went and did competitions at other schools to against their book clubs.
Oh my
Crazy stuff.
goodness. Well, that's amazing, Lauren. That is absolutely incredible. And then from that point, when did you start finding your voice as an author in the sense of the genres you wanted to write, beginning with your Witch Trials series?
So, witch trials, I had started working on after college. And it started out because I was obviously very interested in witchcraft and Wicca and things like that. And I wanted to do something, um, I guess that was a little different. So the book is very loosely tied into historical um, witch trials. The witch trials that actually happened in Loudun, France.
Mm.
Now, and I say very loosely, I mean like it's mentioned and stuff like that. Um, but I wrote that book because I wanted to write it from the perspective of somebody who was being accused, and not someone who I, it just like I wanted to show 2 viewpoints. I wanted to show the viewpoint because it follows 2 perspectives of the sisters in the book. They're not real blood sisters; they're witch sisters, and one of them was captured while the other one escaped. So I wanted
Mm.
to show both those viewpoints and kind of have them converge, and meet up near the end of the book to show how their bond and their strength through their relationship and meeting these other people. One of the sisters makes friends with people in the prison. The other sister makes friends with people outside of the prison, and how everyone kind of worked together to get her imprisoned sister out. And it was a really fun ride. Um, I had a lot of fun writing it because I really enjoyed the dual perspective of it, because it was kind of like I got to write 2 stories at once. Um, and while I enjoyed writing witch trials, I wanted to actually look into writing different genres. So if you look at my catalog of books that I have Witch Trials, which is a suspense thriller, and then I have like Brimstone, which is an urban fantasy with dark romance involved. I have another one that's just a pure dark romance. Um, I've kind of dabbled in a bunch of different genres to find my niche. I feel most comfortable writing supernatural fantasy
Okay.
with hints of romance, but I like to challenge myself as a writer. So I write in different genres to do that. And so some people might think that one of my stories that's more in my niche of urban fantasy or dark fantasy is better than what I write in a different genre, but those seem to be where I've been most comfortable with, and that's kind of where I found out that I shine the most.
Nice. All right. And then ultimately, whenever you begin a new project, Lauren, a new book, what is the promise you're making to not only yourself, but also to your readers, as well as the goal you have for not only that project, but for all new books that you begin working on?
Well, I wish I could say it's something super profound, but it's not. I When I write, I don't write with my audience or readers in mind. And I know that probably sounds really strange coming from a writer, but if I do that, I feel like I start trying to cater towards an audience instead of being my authentic self,
Right.
and have my characters go in the direction that I want them to. Because if you look at mainstream media and what's out there right now, you'll see that dark romance and stuff is at the top of the Amazon lists, right? I you know, Not everything has to be a dark romance or even include romance. So I feel like if I try to do something that caters to an audience very prematurely on, I'm going to write characters that aren't what I was going for in the beginning. Like they're not authentic to me. They're doing things that just just to make readers happy. I mean, you can see that happen in some areas. Like look at J.K. Rowling and what she did with Hermione and Harry and Ron. Hermione was never supposed to be with Ron, not until
Mm,
the movies came out, and that's a fact. So that's why when I write for myself first. And then, like, when I get comfortable and I start posting things on Inkitt, I look at reviews, I look at feedback, take into consideration things. But usually, my followers and people who follow me, they enjoy what I write because it's staying true to the characters. You don't want to write something where a character is going to be completely out of character.
absolutely true. Absolutely. And that's a little fun little question, Lauren. Are you a pantser or a planner when it comes to writing?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say earlier on, I would just start writing and kind of not really think about it. But that always led to a lot more editing than what I want to do because, everyone hates the editing part, right? Um, so I think now that I am writing more seriously and professionally, I've gone more towards planning. I actually use AutoCrit to kind of keep my notes in line. So I write chapter notes for every single chapter. And especially when you have a series, it's just super helpful to keep a little organized because sometimes you write the first book in a series and you might not write the second one until years later. And if you're like me, I'm not trying to go back and read a whole 500, 800 page book that I wrote a few years ago. Like I'm ready to start writing now. So it's just easier for me to go back and just read the notes and the character descriptions that I had written previously and kind of go from there.
Very true. Absolutely. And kind of another question, Lauren, for your characters throughout not only your Witch Trial series, but also the most recent one that you are working on, how do you ensure that the characters feel authentic to the world that they exist in? I'm sure you'll definitely agree that not only as an author, but also as a reader as well, there are characters that are more believable than others in the sense that some characters are written to just be the archetype, the trope character.
Hmm. So one of my biggest things that I really try to flesh out in my books is the plot. Um, I am not going to make a character do something that I think is stupid. Let me just say stupid because I've seen too many horror movies. We're all going to sit there and be like, don't go through that door that you just heard that scream from. Why don't you call the police first? That kind of thing. So I'm very big with like making sure that my characters do something that's not going to be um, just something that you wouldn't do yourself in real life. You know what I mean? Uh, I don't like having plot holes. I try to keep that kind of tight. Um, with characters, I mean, as you write, they kind of start doing their own thing. I hate to talk about them like like they're completely like people sitting in here with us talking to us, but sometimes like they're talking in your head and they're like, "Are you really going to make me do that?" Because I would not.
Yes, that is true. I've had a lot of people say the exact same thing, and some even gone forward and say like whenever they're writing like a certain scene, they just turn their brains off and just let the character tell the story. And you know what? There is truth to that because they are beings in their own right in the story that we write them in. And as authors, we are sometimes the vehicle to bring them to life. Now, this next one, Lauren, may be a little difficult. A lot of authors have been stumped on this question, and it's almost like picking your favorite child. Of all the characters that you have written across your different bodies of work, who is your favorite and which one causes you the most stress?
Could you repeat the question one more time? I'm sorry, I had trouble hearing.
Of course, of
Mhm.
course. The question was across all of your stories, of all the characters you have written, who is your all time favorite and which character caused you the most grief?
Ooh, that's a pretty good question. I've written so many different stories. I would have to say, um, currently my favorite character is Cass. It's short for Castea. She's the main character, the main protagonist of the Brimstone trilogy. And the reason I say that she's probably my favorite is because she has gone through a lot of emotional turmoil. She's so conflicted about doing the right thing, but she's just full of shame and grief and guilt over her position and um, just things that are expected of her. Her character is that she is the daughter of Lucifer, and she is destined to take over as the new queen of hell. However, there's an internal war in hell. There's civil war, basically, where she's having to kind of protect her throne, but also has friends who she's trying to navigate relationships with that she's never had before. So whenever I'm writing her, she's always so complex. And now in Ashfall, she's getting to the point where kind of she's she's I would say she's losing faith, but discovering it at the same time because there's a lot of Christian mythology, um, a lot of Catholicism and stuff in these books. Obviously, with some of the archetypes that are going on, but she is just so full of turmoil, and it's just fun writing her because she's always conflicted on what's the right thing to do for her people, which are the demons, but also for humanity as a whole. So she's just really cool in that way. And then I would say would you say the hardest character or the least favorite character to write?
The character that caused you the most grief in the sense
Space.
that you could not get them to fruition or they were just such a nightmare to flesh out.
Ooh, um, I would say the hardest character for me to kind of flesh out right now, and I wouldn't say that they're hard because I don't like them. I absolutely love them, but it's just hard to flesh them out because I have to keep things in the book a secret for their backstory right now. Is Callan, who is a paladin in the Brimstone series. He's pretty complex too. I mean, he's been a paladin for most of his life, which is basically a demon hunter who from an order that works for the Vatican. And he has aligned himself with Cass because he knows that she needs to take over hell. Otherwise, the world will fall into chaos under the true Antichrist, which is not Cass.
Mm.
So he's having some issues with being loyal to Cass, but also still being loyal to his order. And I want to write so much about him, but I can't do it because this isn't his story. This is not his book. So I'm actually going to be writing a spin-off book that is a brimstone, I guess a brimstone story specifically about Callan after the events of Ashfall. But it's hard keeping things a secret because I want to write about it now, but I'm like, not your turn, not your time.
Yeah, I know the struggle. There are a lot of characters in my own uh work, especially the one I'm working on now, which is a World War II story where I've introduced so many interesting characters who I plan to make into their own spin-offs, but I can't divulge too much information on them because like I don't want to like fully flesh them out in the first book. I want to at least give little teasers and hints, but it's so stressful because ultimately the characters that cause us the most grief or stress are ultimately the ones we have the most enjoyment on, which is the struggle that all authors go through when it comes to characters. And on the topic of authors, this leads to another thing which I'm very keen to hear your insight on, Lauren. And it is the notion of feeling comfortable and taking ownership of the title of being an author. Because as I talked to a lot of people on the show, there is still that faint stigmatism of those that are either small press published, hybrid published, or self published, despite the fact that a majority of books now are written by these types of authors, but that stigmatism still exists. So, for you, Lauren, when did you feel comfortable and confident in your own abilities to take the mantle and feel comfortable telling people, whether it be strangers or even friends and family, that you are an author?
Yeah, so, you know, I don't think I used the term author for myself until after I had, like, self-published more than one book, actually. I think it was when I self-published, like, my 2nd or 3rd book, because before then, I just called myself a writer. I don't know, I felt like the term writer was more fitting than being author for some reason.
Mm,
But I would say that even writing a book, even if it's not published at all, whether it's, self-published or a hybrid publishing company or traditional, I mean, technically makes you an author. There are so many people out there who say they're going to write a book and they never do, right? Or they start writing a book and they get through like maybe a chapter or two and then they just put it down and they never look at it again. That happens all the time. So, I mean, even writing a book is a huge accomplishment in and of itself. So I would say that anyone who's written a book, regardless of how many people have seen it, should be able to call themselves whether they feel more comfortable with the term writer or author, whatever. I would say that in my mind, they are an author. And you're right, there are so many people who have self-published out there, and it's becoming increasingly popular to the point where I'm not sure that we're going to have much of a need for traditional publishers in the future besides for marketing, for those who want it to be marketed to the masses on like a larger scale.
mhm.
There I've read books from both indie authors. I actually read most of my books from indie. When I say indie, I mean like people who are self-published or gone through like hybrid publishing or whatever.
Same.
I've read a bunch of indie authors, and like I said, mainly indie authors, and I do a bunch of book reviews, which are on my website and stuff. And to be honest with you, I don't think they're much different from some of the traditionally published stuff today. I have read some traditional published books, maybe in the past year. Not very many, but some of them I'm like, wow, this was traditionally published. I'm like, seems about the same as the last book I read last week from an author who has like 2 reviews on Amazon. Like, it's so I mean I wouldn't say any one of them is better writing than the other. Just they just got it published in a different way. Now, as for being seen, like for to the masses, yeah, I mean, indie authors probably are a little less likely to be seen, just because of the marketing and stuff that we cannot afford for
Yes.
the most part. But other than that, I mean, you're still an author.
Yes. Absolutely. Very, very true. And going back to something that you touched on a little bit earlier, when it comes to reviews, what have the reviews been like for your stories? Are they positive, very critical, or a 50-50 split?
I think they're pretty positive. My reviews on Amazon, I think I have like I think I've got 3 or 4 books now published on Amazon, and all of them are, like, over a 4.5 stars with kind of an average between, like, 15 and 20 reviews a piece. But I don't really base it too much off of that. I actually prefer Inkitt and the readers on there because they leave me comments and feedback on, like, each chapter and inline paragraphs, and they can kind of talk directly with me. And so when we can talk about the stories together, fun fact, all of my stories are actually in the same universe.
Really?
Yes. So you might see crossovers with different characters in certain books that are coming up soon.
All right. Good to know. Good to know. So now, Laura, we're going to shift a little bit. And these questions I've actually saved specifically for your interview because I'm really, really excited to ask this. I also want to ask you about, your podcasting days when you ran your podcast, or if you're still doing your podcast. And what was that like for you starting in that medium as well?
I really enjoyed podcasting. I had a lot of fun with it. It got a little tougher when it wasn't just me in the house anymore. My husband and I have been married for almost 5 years now, and my son, he's 2 years old, and my daughter is 8 months. And so trying to keep a 2-year-old and 8 month quiet is just not going to happen.
No.
Actually, I'm very surprised how quiet they're being right now, but it is nap time, so but, but it just made it a little more difficult to do podcasting and sit down and actually do it. So my podcast show has been a hiatus. But when I was doing it, I very much enjoyed talking to the other authors. I enjoyed doing reviews on my podcast of different of
Hmm.
people's stories and their books. Is the first chapter reviews were pretty great. I got to give like my honest feedback on them. And later on, I kind of went away from the review from doing like reviews on my podcast and more in line with my blog that I have on my website, laureneason.com. And I started doing like my thoughts on different things that were happening in the author indie world, like what we were talking about with publishing companies, and AI was a big one, and all
Yep.
that stuff.
That again, absolutely 100% correct. And I'm actually glad you brought up the topic of AI because we will be touching that a little bit later. And this also is another a fan question that I actually got earlier this week. And oh gosh, this is another tough one. Which episode from your podcast is your personal favorite?
Oh my goodness. Oh, let's see. Gosh, oh my gosh, that is such a hard question.
I know it,
I
it, it,
mean,
it is. It's like picking
I've
your favorite kid.
yeah, like I've had so many different episodes that like had a lot of really good information in there. Um, I want to say my favorite episodes are probably the ones I can only give you like a broad view, probably not like a specific episode, but like the ones where I was doing a lot of informational stuff for like new
Mhm.
authors and new writers, like the ones where I talked about the differences between the publishing companies and how to go about doing self-publishing, the little tips and tricks that I learned as I was doing it myself, and what kind of works. I did a lot of episodes that had software that was very beneficial with writing. And for those who are looking for reviews, and how to get reviews from people with like ARCs and like BookBub and stuff like that. Those are probably my favorite ones because I felt like I was actually helping people who are out there who are brand new to their writing journey and may not know where to start.
I have to agree. Those are some of my favorite episodes to the informational ones, which I thought were very, very helpful. And I will urge everyone to go and check out Lauren's podcast, which I'll provide the link down below in the description of this video. And kind of on this topic of, social media and, podcasting, I want to ask you, Lauren, the kind of almost like a little introduction into the business side of being an author when it comes to the social media side, because it has changed the industry for better or for worse. I mean, 20 years ago, social media was not even a thing back in the day. But now every author has a social media platform, tries to post as much as they can, tries to follow the algorithm and bring awareness of their book to the masses. And as you mentioned earlier, you still, post on Inkitt as well. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on how you've been able to market your books while still keeping to your authenticity.
Yeah, so social media is such a necessary evil for writing books, I'd say, because for me, I just want to sit here and I just want to write books, which is something that Inkitt is great for. I can just be there, write, edit, do whatever I want to. I post on my wall pretty regularly on Inkitt too. But social media is so hard to keep up with. I'm not going to lie. There are just so many different accounts. We have Facebook, you have Instagram. There are people on Blue Sky. There are people on Twitter.
Mhm.
X now, and it's just so there's just so many, and it's like, how do you know which one to choose? How do you know which ones to focus on? And I used to believe that I had to do all of them, and now I'm just like, you know what? I do have like my X account, my Instagram, my Facebook, and everything, and I have my own website, which I think having your own website is probably one of the best things you can do, because
Yes.
you can do blogs, you can do pictures, you can self promote, and no one is going to tell you not to self promote because it's your website. I believe that's one of the best things you can do because it's all in one place. But my best advice is to pick a couple of them and just focus on those. Don't worry about catching every single social media account out there, and just make sure that you keep up with those. Because for me, trying to keep up with 4, 5, 6 different social media accounts is that's too much for a stay-at-home mom of 2 kids who are very, very young. So
Yes.
yeah, so that's my advice, is pick 2 or 3 and be consistent with it. And if you are in any Facebook groups or Instagram groups or whatever that allow you to self promote, go ahead and drop your links and see what happens.
Absolutely. Again, great answers, Lauren. Great answers. Now, this next question, I'm going to combine a few together in the notion of, when it comes to AI. Now, I've talked with a lot of authors on the show about this topic of, AI in the industry. Now, AI now is Pandora's box. We can't get rid of it. It's ingrained in every facet of our culture and society. And we can use AI as authors as a tool to help us. But I think what a lot of people are pushing against, and rightfully so, is the use of generative AI, whether that's covers or creating books. And some have argued that that has heightened, writer's block and imposter syndrome, in the sense of, I don't know if I can create anything if AI is going to make something, in like a few seconds or so and create a whole new idea, whole new world, or what have you. But you also see the rise of AI witch hunts in the publishing
Hmm.
community, where authors are accusing other authors of, yeah, they're using AI in their covers, AI in their bodies of works, or anything like that. So, Lauren, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the rise in usage of AI, specifically generative AI, in the industry.
Yeah, so this has been a huge debate. I don't know if you've been in the Inkitt community groups. I'm actually uh, one of the moderators for the writing and editing group on the Inkitt website. And I remember that I was going to do some reviews for people, and I put out there underneath the review group, like, hey, I'm open to doing some reviews for people on some books if you want something that's like super in depth. Because you've seen my book reviews, like
Mhm.
I hit some pretty hard hitting topics. Like my reviews are probably a page and a half to 2 pages long,
Oh
which
yeah.
is a lot for some people. But that's because I like giving feedback, and that's the only way to help another author grow. So, but what I wrote in my posting was, please just no books that are written with AI. And I was talking like full paragraphs, full chapters, the whole book, And
Right.
apparently that sparked like a huge debate because people were like, well, what about Grammarly and stuff? And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's like AI to help you find like if a word is misspelled. I mean, yes, everyone uses spell check nowadays,
Yes.
but when I'm talking about like when you have full chunks of your book written because are just you just think it can write it better for you, and maybe it can, but you also have to realize that AI can only recreate what other people have already created. Okay, it it cannot create something completely new for you. It's going to
Nope.
use the same tropes. It's going to use the same stuff that it's used for other people's books. All it's doing is changing the character names for you and their descriptions. But all the scenes and everything, I mean, it's all going to be the same. So if you use AI to write your whole chunks of books, I mean, yes, there are people who do it. Do I think it's right morally? No, I do not. And do I think it might take over the publishing world someday? Actually, it might, because it's
Hmm.
so easy. It's so easy. But to be honest with you, I really hope that people do push back against AI because, I mean, we've got traditional publishers out there. Why would they need to hire or, go out and search for an author who's written a fantastic book if they can now write it in house in a fraction of the time?
Yes.
They can just completely cut out the middleman. They can just hire an in-house writer. I'm using air quotation marks. I know you can't see this, but somebody who's just in-house, and all they do is they plug in tropes all day long and just churn out AI generated books in half of the time with half of the marketing, and they're mainstream sellers because that's all AI does is they do a is mainstream sellers. I was reading an article the other day where AI companies are buying books in
Oh
mass,
yes.
books that you cannot get anymore because they're off the market for whatever reason, they're no longer available. They are buying the physical books, feeding it into the AI machines, and then burning the books.
Mm.
They're gone.
Yes. I heard that, and it just destroyed my heart that they were doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I do think that there is some danger in AI. I'm an avid gamer. I don't know if you know the game Split Fiction that came out a
I
year or
don't
two
think
ago.
so.
It's made by a small indie developer. I think they're out of the Ukraine. Um, they made this game. It's called Split Fiction. The premise of this game is that this publishing company has found these really small authors who are trying to get their work published, promises them a publishing contract, and then puts them in saying that they can go into this machine, and this machine is going to extract their ideas and publish the book, but it's going to be their book, when in reality, that's not what they're doing. They're taking the authors, putting them in the machine, taking all of their ideas out of their head, which you're playing through in the game, and basically turning it into this one AI conglomeration where they're just stealing their stories. That's what they're doing.
Mm.
And it's so funny that that an indie game developer had to come up with something like that. And the whole time I'm playing this game, because like I said, I'm an avid gamer, I'm like, wow, this is something that would actually happen. It's happening everywhere, not just with us, but with the gaming industry too. I mean, there are games that are using AI to create all of their games now. So it's it's a lot, and I hope that writers kind of push back on that, and readers. I'm so proud of some of the readers being able to tell the difference.
You're 100% correct again, Lauren, because there is no right answer to this. The only thing we can do is to call it out when we see it and push back against it. And especially when it came to the books with those AI companies, it destroyed my heart because, if we destroy physical media, we're never going to have it again, because there's something nostalgic with holding a book, like an old book, and just feeling the pages in your hand. It's an incredible feeling. And these books, we can learn from them. We can. And it's unfortunate that this is happening now in our day and age, but that's why now more than ever we have to fight back against this. And now, kind of going fully into the business side of being an author, Lauren, when you began marketing your books, what really surprised you about that aspect? And looking back, what would you have done differently?
With marketing, so I'm probably like I've done a lot of research into marketing. Do I follow that research? Do I follow my own advice? No, because I just don't have enough time that I did before with everything. Um, but I will say that when I was doing the research with marketing, I mean, the some of the like I said, I had a lot of software and stuff that I used. Some of the software was good. Um, I did notice that the more you review other people's works and give feedback, the more likely you are to get reviews and get feedback. Um, I hate that it is that way. I know people have to put in some legwork, but it is the truth. There are a lot of people who, will do a tit for tat kind of thing.
Yep.
Um, don't pay anybody though, because that will definitely get you banned from Amazon and these retailers. So do not
Yeah.
pay. Don't ever pay for that. You're going to get so many emails and messages from people who are like, yeah, I can get you a 10 reviews if you pay me $50. No, don't do that. It will get you
Nope.
banned. It will get your books taken down. Don't ever pay somebody for reviews. But I did use a company called Bookroar. I didn't pay for anything, but basically what it is they put people's books into a pool, and then you can choose a book and you can review it, and then you get a credit for after you review a book. The credit, all it does is put your own book into a book pool, so you don't know if anyone's actually going to pull your book to review it, but it puts it out there and cycles through it for other people if they want to review your book. And that was really cool. I actually still use them today. They're a pretty neat company. I think they've changed their user stuff recently, so I don't know exactly what their stuff is now. I think they have like a membership thing you can do now, but it's just so you can find other people's books. It's not to buy credits or anything. Um, so but they were really good. And then I also signed up on like BookBub, where I have an account that I do reviews on. I put my reviews on Goodreads as well, and just it's kind of been more organic with the reviews and stuff that I've gotten on my books. Um, I just there are people out there who pay for those services that are solicited to them, and maybe it works for them. I personally would not do that, and I have not done that, so I can't attest to how, you know, well that is.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And another thing also to add is that, not all of us know how to market our books. We are not business people. We're not marketers. So we're just pretty much a trial and error when it comes to promoting our books. And once we find that one thing or a few things that work with promotion, we stick with that until the very end. Now, before we end this incredible author's interview, Lauren, there's a few last questions I do want to ask you. And this one question, or actually two questions, are really, really cool. And they ask for you, Lauren, who are some of the authors and books that really inspired you and may have inadvertently helped you develop your voice as an author?
So I read a whole bunch of mystery, like whole lot of mystery books when I was growing up. Nancy Drew,
Mm-hmm.
my all-time favorite. I even play the Nancy Drew PC games. I have all of them. Um, I Carolyn Keene, even though it's so funny because Carolyn Keene only wrote like the first few books, and then the rest of them are ghostwriters under the name. So you can, when you read the Nancy Drew books in order, you can tell when they're the different authors because Nancy's hair color changes or her eye color changes. And it's so funny to me because, like as an author, I'm like, continue, we want to be consistent, we want to have that, across the board. Um, and they published it anyway. So it's always fun figuring out and be like, is she going to be a redhead in this book or is she going to be blonde? I don't know. I guess we'll see. Is she going to have a dog or a cat? And so I also read a lot of Mary Higgins Clark, which I think her daughter writes now too. They wrote a bunch of mystery novels, and Agatha Christie also played the PC games for Agatha Christie as well.
Nice.
I wish I could say that I had authors that were more like up to this day and age, but it's just been so hard trying to read new books from traditionally published or, authors. My friend Kim Applegren, she's one of my
Mhm.
favorites. Me and her have been friends for a very long time in the Inkitt days, and you know
Oh yeah.
Kim. So,
Mhm.
I've helped her actually do her latest version of The Silent Witness that's now available on Amazon. I helped her with that. So that's up there. She's just great. She's always been super supportive.
Yes, absolutely. And huge shout out to Kim. And for those who don't know, she was one of the first guests that actually started the Wandering Scribe back in the day. And yeah, she is an incredible author. Again, another great friend from the Inkitt days. Her, Jaden, and a few other people from the Inkitt days, which seems like such a long time ago. And now, Lauren, we arrive at the final question of this incredible interview. At the end of the day, looking back on your journey as a writer and also as a person, what is the one thing you want readers to take away from your stories? And what would be your word of wisdom to the next generation of writers and authors listening to this interview?
I think that, you know, I have such a broad range of stories, and I actually have a notepad where I have probably like a dozen other stories that are waiting to be written that I have been scribbling down notes for plots to. And eventually I'll get to those. Eventually they will be up on Inkitt and people can follow those too. But I guess for anybody who's reading books or writing books, I guess my advice is to write what you want and read what you want. You know, like don't worry about what other people think. Don't measure your success on how many reads you get or the metrics that are, on your social media accounts. Like because you're already successful if you've even completed the story that you've read or the one that you've written. So just don't worry about it.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, Lauren. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we conclude our first author interview for the month of August here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I want to give a huge thank you to my good and dear friend Lauren for coming on the show, making her official debut, and hopefully not the last time. Lauren, where can people find you on social media if they want to reach out and connect, as well as buy a copy or two of your stories? And do you have any upcoming announcements you would like to share?
Yeah. So if anyone wants to find my stories, they're available on Amazon. I have a few of them available on Barnes and Noble. I actually use Drafted Digital. So Brimstone, and I believe Every Waking Dream can be actually borrowed directly from the library if you wanted to on Hoopla and Libby app. Um, you can find me on my website, laureneason.com, or my email, authorlaureneason@gmail.com. I also have Facebook, X, and Instagram. My Inkitt account, if you want to go read some of my free stories and some of my stories that are not published, is Lady Rowan. That was my username from when I
Mm-hmm.
first started, and I just didn't use my own name, but and I don't plan on changing it just because people know me from that username now. So it's Lady Rowan. And some of the upcoming things I have is Hellfire should be published by the end of this year, which is the sequel to Brimstone. Brimstone came out last year, published. So Hellfire will be out before the end of this year. And if you're wanting to read the third book, Ashfall, as I am writing it, it is on my Inkitt account at Lady Rowan.
Excellent. I'll link all that down below in the description of this video, ladies and gentlemen. And if you'd like to see Lauren back on the show in a follow-up interview or an episode of the Writers Hub, or if you'd like to see Lauren on a panel episode with her, Kim, Jaden, and a few other people from the Inkitt days, you know you have to do. Like this video, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, this has been the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill, signing out. Wish you all a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. Happy Monday, everybody, and we'll see you all next time. Take care. Have a wonderful day.